This Memorial Day, Real America's Voice presents a powerful television event, America Remembers, hosted by Beau Davidson.
Freedom is directly possible because of those who came before us.
Featuring Gold Star mother, Vaughn.
The military ended up at my front door, but I already knew.
Wounded Navy SEAL Jason Redman.
Doctors say it's a miracle I survived.
TAPS founder Carroll.
You are not alone. There is a community.
And former Navy SEAL Wyllie.
Nobody here goes to bed at night worrying there'll be enemy troops in our streets.
A moving look at sacrifice, freedom, and the heroes who gave everything for America.
Your mind literally just stops functioning.
America Remembers starts right now, only on Real America's Voice.
Welcome to America Remembers, a Memorial Day special for Real America's Voice. Today, America remembers. We remember the honor, the sacrifice, the duty, the glory, the honor, the significance, the impact of 250 years of fighting for this great country of ours. Memorial Day is a time to reflect, to ponder, to remember those who came before us and made this noble experiment possible. I think this has particular significance this year as we celebrate America's 250th birthday. We recently saw Rededicate 250, an incredible time of worship and prayer on the National Mall, where Americans rededicated this nation to God, to noble values and blessings. And very soon we will witness the actual 250th birthday on our Independence Day, July 4th. But before July 4th is always Memorial Day, that last Monday in May, when we honor those who served and died in pursuit of that freedom that this country was founded upon. While many will take today to enjoy things that you would ordinarily not be able to do during the week, maybe that's a barbecue, a picnic, a park, getting out on the river, the lake, or a beach, those are all great things and should be done because that freedom is directly possible because of those who came before us. Those names etched in granite at Arlington National Cemetery, those state names on the World War II Memorial, the vast sea of names on the Vietnam Memorial, and so many other ways that we commemorate the fallen. My personal challenge this Memorial Day was to use my artistry to put into music and words what I feel Memorial Day is all about. And I have to admit, it wasn't easy. But then I thought about the dignified transfer of the soldiers who came home in caskets to Dover, Delaware recently. I had never covered a dignified transfer before on air, and as I was able to tell a little bit about each soldier and their background. Perhaps the most devastating was Sergeant Declan Cody, just 20 years old, a guy who took great pride in serving his country. He was an Eagle Scout, and his community described him as someone who was a friend, a son, a servant. So I took Sergeant Cody as kind of my inspirational springboard. And over the course of this special, you will hear bits and pieces of the song I've been working on called We Remember. I thought of Sergeant Cody and the other brave soldiers who perished in Operation Epic Fury because it's fresh in our minds. We haven't seen combat like this in quite some time. So when the bodies come home, it hits different. It reminds us of the cost of freedom, and it's never just one loss. Each soldier has a unique story, a unique background, a different path to service. It is up to us to honor their memory and legacy. Over the next hour, you will hear from Gold Star moms, Navy SEALs, and people who have made it their mission to ensure grieving military families have support as America remembers this Memorial Day. We'll be right back.
A name on the wall among thousands of others, etched into granite with so many brothers, reminding us the cost is never free. Hill after hill of tiny white stones, each one the story of sweat, blood, and bones. An angel above looking down on his family. 'Cause we remember every soul and every grave. We remember every folded flag today. We can't forget the sacrifice. We won't forget who paid the price. And we know they didn't die in vain. 'Cause we remember.
Welcome back. Perhaps no one understands the meaning of Memorial Day better than someone who has lost a family member who served in the military. That loss is even greater if that loss is your own son. Karen Vaughn lost her son, U.S. Navy SEAL Chief Aaron Vaughn of SEAL Team 6 in Afghanistan when a chopper carrying 30 Americans into battle was shot down, killing all on board. The tragedy will live in military history as the single largest one-day loss of life in the entire 20-year war on terror and the single largest loss of life in the history of naval special warfare. Karen, thank you so much for being here today. I want to start off just by honoring Aaron's life. And if you would, tell us a history of how Aaron got into the military.
Thank you so much for that, Beau. It's wonderful to be here with you. So Aaron, from the time he was a young boy, probably about 8 years old, he would tell anyone who would listen that he was going to be a Navy SEAL when he grew up. I didn't even really know what that was at the time, but he had this dream. He kept forging through every single obstacle that hit his way, and people would laugh about it and say, you can't do it. He didn't have the body type for it. He was 6'4" and weighed about 140 pounds soaking wet when he was 16, so he didn't look like the person who could do that. He ended up being a very good football player, and just before the first game of his senior year, he blew out the anterior cruciate ligament in his left knee. Thought his dream was over, but we went and had surgery, fixed it. This is an important story, so forgive me for just taking a second to tell you this. Had it fixed, had a new ACL put in. He rehabbed so hard that, by the time he graduated, scouts were already looking at him to possibly pick him up for a smaller school college football team. And then he was playing a pickup game of basketball with some friends just before he graduated, and he blew his knee out again. This time when the surgeons went in, they said, there's absolutely nothing I can do to fix your knee. You're going to spend the rest of your life somewhat handicapped, and you will never be able to do anything physical again without the use of a special brace. So when Aaron woke up from that anesthetic fog, he literally thought life was over. His whole life had been goaled toward doing this one thing, and now he realized he wasn't going to do it. But then came 9/11. And after 9/11, Aaron, just like everybody else in this nation, was shook, didn't know how to respond. He came home on his 21st birthday a few months later, and he sat down across the dinner table from his father and I, and he said, I stopped by the Navy recruiter's office on my way home from work, and I joined the SEAL Challenge program. And we couldn't believe it. His father said, what about your knee? And he said, Dad, I've always known this is what God was calling me to do. It's what I was created for, and I'm going to do it. And you know the rest of the story. He not only made it, his name is on the wall at Coronado Island. Of the few men in history who completed every evolution required of them the first time they tried it. It's called the first time, every time wall. And as you know, he made it all the way into SEAL Team 6, and no one ever knew about the knee, or they wouldn't have let him proceed. So it's a God story. It's something he was created to do. And it's something that, he got to live out. He never spent a day of his life not being grateful that he got to do this.
Well, Karen, I'm so glad you told that story. It gives us perspective, and what an incredible story of passion and purpose and what he was able to do in spite of the odds. I think it's an incredible story, so thank you for telling us that. Karen, what did Memorial Day mean to you before Aaron died in that tragic chopper incident? I'd like for you to talk about how you felt about Memorial Day before it and then after Aaron's passing.
This is why I never get upset with people about the way they take on Memorial Day, because I was just like you. Even while Aaron was serving, it was barbecues, it was a long weekend, it was big sales, and that's the way I entered Memorial Day. I was going to be off work on Monday, and of course, after August 6, 2011, all of that shifted. And I remember the first Memorial Day that we spent in May of 2012, I felt like my heart would break for how much I had taken for granted what that day meant. And the day literally demolished us as a family to just start to internalize what Memorial Day meant. And I've made it a pretty big mission of mine to start making people focus on, we honor veterans all year long. It's a great thing to do any time of the day, but there is one day that we stop and remember those who actually gave their lives so that we could live in this amazing United States of America under the umbrella of freedom. And that's what Memorial Day is about.
That's so true. And I know your perspective is entirely different. As a songwriter, I've never served in the military. My father, my grandfather did, but I've tried my best to honor American sacrifice in my own artistic way. And recently, Karen, I began writing a song called We Remember. And the first lyric that came to my mind was a knock on the door when you're not expecting, uniformed men with somber expression telling you news you don't want to hear. This is typically military protocol when there's a loss of life and alerting the family. If you can and you wouldn't mind sharing, how did you learn of Aaron's death?
Yeah, so his father, my husband Billy, was away from home on that morning, and he called me very early and he said, Karen, I have something I don't want to tell you, but I need to. And he went on to explain that he had been hearing news reports all morning that a helicopter had been shot down and that everybody on board was dead. And he said the more they started giving details about the area where they were working, the more it sounded like it could have been Aaron's team. And I said, honey, what can I do? And so I started calling Aaron's friends to see if they had any information. Nobody answered. I later realized why. No one knew what to tell me. I called his wife, who was staying with her parents in Northern Virginia, because they had just had their second child. Chamberlain was only 9 weeks old that morning. And she was up there with her parents. They were helping her. And so I called her parents' house and told them what was going on and said, is Kimberly up yet? And they said, no. And I said, well, don't wake her up till I know more. So we had 2 or 3 phone calls back and forth between me and her father or mother. And then the last time that I called, her father answered the phone and he said, Karen, it's not good. And I said, oh, I know, assuming that he was going to say, it sounds like it could have been Aaron's helicopter and his team, but I could never have prepared myself for what came out of his mouth. He said, listen to me, Aaron was on the helicopter and there were no survivors. And in that moment, your mind literally just stops functioning. You don't know how to process something like that. It actually takes several years to believe it's true. You continue wanting to believe it's not. You can't imagine it, never expected it. Aaron was a Navy SEAL. He was part of SEAL Team 6. He was supposed to always be on the defensive. He wasn't supposed to get killed. He was supposed to just kill the bad guys, right? And so it never crossed my mind. We had a big family reunion planned that November, and we were going to meet back in Tennessee on the farm where we raised him and have a big celebration and spend Thanksgiving together. And that's all that was on my mind. I couldn't have fathomed that message was coming to me. And then, of course, a couple hours later, the military ended up at my front door, but I already knew. And that's the way that day went. I will remember one thing. I will tell you one thing I remember is my yard began being flooded with cars, people coming because as word was spreading, they were coming to, spend time with us. And I remember asking somebody, please go lower that flag in my front yard to half mast, because people are going to, when you drive by a yard on a Saturday morning and it's full of cars like that, and you see people walking in with a somber attitude, you kind of know something happened in that family. And I said, I don't want them to just think somebody died. I want them to know someone died for them. So please go lower the flag. And that's the way that morning went. It was the most ungodly moment of my life.
I remember last year when I visited South Florida National Cemetery and even Arlington in years past, that the volume of small white tombstones is vast and as far as the eye can see. But in this vastness is a specific soldier with a specific story. So when we ponder Memorial Day, what is it that we Americans should consider in terms of the individuality as well as the totality of the sacrifice?
You may be asking the best questions I've ever been asked, Beau. This is actually part of the speech I'm delivering on Memorial Day. Look, we have tended to see these people as units and troops, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy, these great big grand ensembles of people. And we very rarely, and then we break it down, we've got brigades and troops and teams and units, right? But never the person. And what I do want people to know is that every single name on every single stone in the cemeteries across this nation, not only at Arlington, they represent a name, they represent a story, they represent a family who lost somebody that they literally never thought, they never dreamed they could live without. Most Gold Star families will tell you the same thing. There's days that you feel like you would rather be dead than continue living, not because you don't love and appreciate everything that's still around you, but because you can't imagine spending the rest of your life under that weight of grief. So look at their names, say their names, teach your children their names. One of my favorite things I ever see is when people send me pictures of Aaron's grave because they've taken their children there to tell them his story. So take your children. If you can't get to Arlington, go to a local veteran cemetery and just look up somebody's story, Google it, and teach your children about him, because they had a real big life and that mattered. And they didn't die. They weren't killed. They gave their life for you.
Yeah, it's great that you say that, Karen, because see, I wasn't even aware that Florida National Cemetery was even a thing. It's basically a mini Arlington. So I was glad I had the opportunity to visit that here in my home state. Well, I know that you've started Operation 300. So tell me about that and how folks can connect with that initiative.
Yeah, so after Aaron's death, he left behind, as I said, two small babies. Reagan, who was not quite two, and Chamberlain, who, as I said, was 9 weeks old. His widow continued asking the same question over and over again: who's going to teach my children the things Aaron would have taught them if he were still here? And it spurred an idea in us, and we began growing it, and that was to build Operation 300. Operation, because that's what SEALs do. They don't do missions, they do operations. And then 300 in honor of the 300 Spartans. And that whole story. And Aaron had Molon-Levay tattooed on his forearm. So it was one of his favorite historical moments. And so what we do is we bring children in from all over the nation for a long extended weekend, and we pair them up with a father-age male mentor, and we let them do things they might have done with their father if he were still alive. They shoot guns, they do archery, they go deep sea fishing, they have wrestled alligators, they've flown planes, it's just, if we always say that if they go home and their clothes are still worth wearing, we didn't do a good job, because we want them to be ruined by the time they're done. And so we're in our 11th or 12th year now of Operation 300. It's become a massive national nonprofit that is just growing and bursting at the seams. And just recently, we also took on caring for the families of fallen law enforcement agents. So we're very proud of that. And go look it up. It's just op300, op300.org.
Wonderful. Well, Karen, I'm just so glad that we got to do this today, because you've been inspirational, motivational. You've honored Aaron's legacy in a way that I don't think anybody else could have done in such a succinct and amazing way, and also given us a perspective on the totality of why we remember this day. So thank you so much for taking the time, reflecting upon Aaron, and making this Memorial Day truly a day to remember.
Thank you very much.
And I want our audience to remember Aaron Vaughn today. Whatever you were doing, think of him, think of Karen, think of the family, and we'll be right back with more.
A knock on the door when you're not expecting, a uniformed man, a somber expression, telling you news that you don't want to hear. He was serving his country, just 20 years old, loved being a soldier, courageous and bold, a son, a friend, a servant, loved by his peers. An Eagle Scout found his wings. With the Eagles now he sings.
Welcome back. My next guest is wounded warrior and retired Navy SEAL Jason Redman, a New York Times best-selling author, speaker, entrepreneur, and coach. Jason served 21 years with the SEAL teams deploying to South America, Europe, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Severely wounded in 2007, Jason now teaches how his overcome mindset helped him rise above a leadership failure, devastating enemy ambush, life-changing injuries, and even a debilitating business crisis. Jason's incredible story, positive message, and vibrant energy make him a highly demanded speaker and coach both nationally and internationally. Jason, welcome to America Remembers.
Beau, honored to be on with you. Thank you.
The honor is all mine and our audience that's watching today. You know, Jason, as a Navy SEAL with 21 years of experience, and especially, I would say, as a wounded warrior, how do you process a day like Memorial Day? Is it just kind of reflect upon it and what it means to you and the significance and impact of Memorial Day?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie, it's a heavy day. It's a day that fills me with a lot of gratitude. Obviously coming very close. I mean, shot, I was hit 8 times in engagement, between my body and body armor, including a machine gun round to the face. Doctors say it's a miracle I survived. I owe my life to my teammates. I owe my life to the Air Force AC-130 gunship that brought in that fire mission. I really shouldn't be here, and I have a lot of teammates who are not here. So that gives me a lot of perspective, and it gives me gratitude for still being here. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I want to do for our other Americans, to make sure they understand what it costs to live in this country. The freedom and the opportunities we have came at a tremendous price. And there's a lot of amazing, amazing Americans who were willing to lay down their lives to enable that freedom and sacrifice. And that is what Memorial Day is all about.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Jason, I have a kind of a unique perspective on the fallen because I've been present for a number of ceremonies in which a soldier's Purple Heart might have been lost or stolen somehow. And once they locate them, those medals are rightly returned to the family as a piece of that soldier's legacy and story. Some were even for soldiers who perished on D-Day. So I've had this kind of unique experience of being part of these ceremonies where the medals come home. If you would, tell us about your injury in 2007 and how that happened.
Yeah, so my team and I were going after a senior al-Qaeda leader outside of Fallujah, Iraq, an area called Al-Karma, pretty dangerous area at that time. He was the #1 leader for the Anbar province, the western province of Iraq for al-Qaeda, and a very dangerous individual. We launched on that target, and to make a long story short, we walked into a very well-executed ambush. He had positioned his security forces outside of the target. We had taken down an initial target and then moved to this secondary target just because of the way intel and things developed. And we walked into this ambush. So myself and multiple members of my team were hit by 2 PKM belt-fed machine guns. We estimate 12 to 15 individuals in this engagement. And my medic was initially hit. One of our other team members ran forward. Matty got our medic, and then Matt was shot 3 times. It still managed to pull himself and Luke back to a tractor tire that was about 15 yards behind me. I was trying to lay down fire when both machine guns turned on me, so hit 8 times, like I said, between my body and body armor. 2 rounds in the elbow, rounds off my helmet, weapon. Turned to move out of the way, and that's when I caught a round in the face, hit me right in front of the ear, traveled through my face, took off my nose, blew out my right cheekbone, and knocked me unconscious, dropped me in front of our guys, about 15 yards in front of them. We estimate I was unconscious for 5 to 10 minutes while this gunfight just raged. I came to, managed to, reach out to my team leader. They realized I was still alive. My team leader moved forward under fire and got me and pulled me back. I owe my life to him. And we then ended up calling in the closest fire mission ever executed in the Iraq War. We literally called rounds directly on our position. And thankfully and miraculously, all of us survived. We were able to take out the enemy and then get myself and my other teammates to the medevac facility in Baghdad, where, once again, I owe my life to the amazing military medical professionals who saved our lives and started a whole new journey of putting Humpty Dumpty back together.
Jason, you're a highly sought after speaker where you introduce this overcome mindset from great personal setbacks, including obviously some that you've had. Tell us about this mindset and how it can help and inspire people who might be dealing with personal loss or tragedy or other setbacks.
Yeah, I mean, there's no truer statement that to struggle is human. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Everyone in life is going to encounter adversity. Oftentimes people will come up to me and they say, oh my God, I don't want to talk to you about things I'm going through because they don't compare to what you've been through. But what I often like to tell people is, hey, maybe you can't relate to the bullets and bombs of battle, but every human can relate to the bullets and bombs of life. All of us have been shot down by illness or injury or loss. All of us have been blown up by rejection or failure. Every human at some point has walked through the minefields of depression and despair. And that's okay. But an overcome mindset allows us to drive forward through that. We understand that we can't lay there and feel sorry for ourselves. Bad things happen to good people all the time across the entire world. There's 8 billion people. I'm always fascinated with individuals who something bad happens to them and they're like, oh my God, I don't see how this could ever happen to me. And I'm like, why? What makes you so special? I mean, there's terrible things and much worse things that have happened to people all over the world right now as we speak. For those of us who are fortunate enough to be born here in America, I mean, you have freedom and opportunity. Nothing stops you from continuing to do the things you're doing other than you. You have the ability to go after it and change your trajectory if you like. It's merely a choice. No different than it's a choice to overcome. That choice and free will is the most powerful thing you have. And if it's coupled with the freedom and opportunity we have here in America, the sky's the limit. And there's a lot of focus on negative things in this country, we should be focusing more on the successes that are out there, because race, creed, color, gender, demographic, I don't care what it is, there are tens of millions of successful stories of individuals who chose to rise above their circumstance and find success.
Well, Jason, it's been eye-opening for me. Thank you so much for giving your thoughts and your wisdom today, especially this overcome mindset. Real quickly, how can people connect with you to find out more about your work, especially the books that you've written?
Yeah, you guys can find me at jasonredman.com. If any of you are in the DC area, coming to Arlington on Memorial Day, just take a little bit of time and walk through it. There is a spiritual aura that exists in Arlington. It's hallowed ground. Obviously, I will be there on Monday for so many of my teammates that are lost. We have the candlelight vigil that night at 8 p.m. You know, come, bring your family, honor that sacrifice, enjoy that time, and enjoy the freedoms we have. Live a life worthy of the sacrifice that's enabled our freedoms.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much, Jason. God bless you.
Thank you, Beau.
We'll be right back.
We remember every soul in every grave. We remember every folded flag today. We can't forget the sacrifice. We won't forget who paid the price. And we know they didn't die in vain. 'Cause we remember.
Welcome back. When a military officer is killed in action, the family has to be notified. And then begins the often unseen wounds of a family's loss. Bonnie Carroll founded the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors in 1994, following the death of her husband, an Army general, who died along with 7 other soldiers in an Army plane crash in 1992. She envisioned a program capable of providing lifelong comfort and care for all who grieve the death of a military loved one. And her vision is now America's leading nonprofit supporting the families of military and veteran deceased. Ms. Carroll also served her country, retiring as a major in the Air Force Reserves. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining me today on Memorial Day.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for remembering the living legacies of American service and sacrifice.
Absolutely. Well, Bonnie, I want to start off with your own personal loss, which was your husband's death in 1992. What do you remember about the day you were notified?
You know, it was towards the end of my husband's career. He certainly had served in combat. He, could have been killed in any number of ways, but his death came in a routine flight in an Army aircraft. And as you said, along with 7 other soldiers. And at that time when Tom was killed, being a military officer myself, I assumed there was an organization for the families of our nation's fallen heroes. But back then in the early 90s, it just had never existed.
Well, Bonnie, when you experienced this profound loss, you mentioned the fact that there wasn't anything else around. So is that novelty, the fact that there was nothing there, that vacuum, what prompted you to create an organization like TAPS?
Absolutely. Grief is not a mental illness. It isn't a physical injury. Grief is the normal human response to loss. And when a military life is taken, the family is coping not only privately with the loss of a loved one, but also in a very public mourning, along with a nation that honors and remembers. So while the military, as many on our board, including General Martin Dempsey, says so beautifully, the military does a beautiful job of rendering final honors, providing a final resting place, and administering benefits to those who are eligible. But then it really is up to all of us now in TAPS to step in and provide that emotional support as only we can, to provide additional casework assistance, connections to resources in local communities, and we have a 24/7 helpline for families because grief is not 9 to 5.
Oh, you're so right, Bonnie. I know that you wrote this book called Healing Your Grieving Heart After a Military Death. I'm sure that was probably cathartic in many ways to write a book like this, but what would you define as some keys to coping with a military death? How do you do it?
Well, to know that you are not alone, that there is a community. We do this for children to come together at our Good Grief Camp, which we hold, all over the country, but our big one is Memorial Day weekend, hundreds of children who may be meeting another child their age for the very first time who's also lost a loved one, a parent in most cases. So this is an opportunity for us to grieve together, to gain coping resources, and to find out that we walk this journey together as we honor lives lived, regardless of how, where, when that death occurred. We honor the life and remember the service.
I know that Memorial Day has to have the utmost significance to you personally and professionally, and we also have to distinguish it from Veterans Day, which is an entirely different holiday. What can you tell us about the history or significance of Memorial Day that maybe we don't know?
For our families, of course, Memorial Day is every day, but it means so much that the nation pauses to remember service and sacrifice. You know, I love seeing the uniformity of the headstones at our national cemeteries and at Arlington. And regardless of how or where the death occurred, we as Americans honor life and we recognize service given in defense of freedom.
I know, Bonnie, we talked earlier about my song Blessed, and I'm actually trying to write a new song right now. I'm kind of getting back in the creative spirit about Memorial Day specifically, and I say basically that it shouldn't be just one day in May, and I think you just hit the nail on the head with what you just said, that we shouldn't just be looking at this as a one-day event. I also know that you've worked as liaison in the federal government, and I'm curious whether you think our federal government and our VA does enough when it comes to meeting needs, or if this is exactly why TAPS must exist.
Yes, we do have a wonderful advocacy team. We mobilize our families to support wherever we see things that could be handled maybe a little better. We opened up the VA's Vet Center counseling to provide grief support to all family members. Things like that. We've adjusted education benefits so they are more inclusive. We now have several bills going through Congress that will improve the benefits for surviving families. So this is our opportunity to give voice to hundreds of thousands of surviving families and make our government maybe understand the challenges that we face.
Now, I think you mentioned that you've got this camp that's coming up, but what is Memorial Day usually like for TAPS? Is it the same kind of event planning every single year, or for you personally, how do you treat each Memorial Day? Because each one is new, it's different, it's distinct, it's a different set of families. So how do you treat personally each Memorial Day that you encounter?
We have about 1,500 family members coming together this Memorial Day weekend. It'll be our 32nd annual gathering. It goes over 5 days. We have a good grief camp that's happening with kids, and they will be paired with a military volunteer who we train to be a mentor to them, to be that bridge back into the military community, and to learn coping skills right along with them. So 40% of those who attend this weekend will be coming to their first event.
Oh, wow.
Newly bereaved. And the other 60% will be right there wrapping their arms around them to let them know they're not alone. As they go through workshops, sharing groups, just having a meal together, to know that you are in this community where conversations can be raw, authentic, and remembering the life story of their loved ones.
So Bonnie, if someone out there is struggling right now with the loss or grief of a military member, how can they connect with TAPS? What do they do?
Please call our 800 number. It's 24/7, 800-959-TAPS. Follow us on social media at TAPS.org, or find all of our resources at our website, TAPS.org. So very simple to get in touch. Please, those who have lost loved ones in the military are not alone, regardless of how or where that death occurred. This is a family of all of us honoring service and sacrifice.
Well, Bonnie, I think it's incredible what you've created with TAPS. It's such an important resource, and I hope that if there is someone out there today who's struggling with that they do reach out to you and TAPS and follow everything that you're doing. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. And rather than saying the proverbial happy Memorial Day, because I know it's not always happy for a lot of people, but I do wish you a blessed Memorial Day. Thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you.
And we will be right back with more. And as we head to break, don't forget that this Memorial Day, Angel Studios is offering 42% off their normal membership price. So head on over to angel.com/rev to take advantage of their Memorial Day sale. We'll be right back.
We remember every soul in every grave. We remember every folded flag. sacrifice. We won't forget who paid the price, and we know they didn't die in vain, 'cause we remember.
Welcome back. I thought it would be appropriate for this Memorial Day special to get the perspective of someone who has served on the front lines. Chris Wyllie is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL and is now executive director of the Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy Navy SEAL Museum in New York. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today on this very, very special Memorial Day show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Chris, first of all, give us some history and context to your path to the military and your tenure as a SEAL.
Just growing up, I had a whole family that had military service in the past. I looked up to people that served our country, and it was just a goal that I had, as a child and throughout high school. So when I got out of high school, decided, I want to be something special and research. This is back a long time ago, and I joke, right around where dial-up was. So there really wasn't any information on SEALs. So kind of found a book, found out about SEALs and read some stories and loved the mystique of it. And, joined, and then the rest is history on that. I was one of a few SEALs that have gone through the two halves of Naval Special Warfare, the Special Boat Unit training, and was at Special Boat Unit 12, then went through SEAL training and was at SEAL Team 2. I wound up spending about 7 years in the military before I was hurt. So once I injured myself, then I had to become medically retired. I was planning on doing a full career.
Something that I learned, Chris, from people whom I interviewed for this very special is that the family that loses the service member has to endure both a private and a public grieving process. What would you say is the best way for the public to assist or care for families who have lost military service members?
One, I can't put myself into the shoes of somebody who lost a son or a daughter, right? I have kids, and I can't imagine the hole that would be left in my body, that, how you would go on. So to understand that and to, walk lightly around that situation is of the utmost importance, especially when it's fresh, especially when it just happened. So just showing, decorum and respect and, even just dignity of standing next to them. You don't have to talk, you don't have to, make them say stuff. You can just be there for them, be a presence, but just remember that person cashed that check that they gave to our country to sacrifice their life for our freedoms. And that family is paying for it now. And it's I work daily at the Lieutenant Michael Murphy Navy SEAL Museum, where the movie Lone Survivor was based on. So I deal with Gold Star families daily. And some days are okay and some days are not, and this has been a long time since Michael passed. So it's just being there for people and understanding the amount of sacrifice that person gave, and then what that family's enduring.
Well, let's talk about that, Chris, because one way that you've chosen to honor the fallen, your fallen brothers and sisters, is to serve as executive director of the Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy SEAL Museum in New York. What can you tell me about the legacy of Lieutenant Murphy and why this is so important to you?
Well, to be completely honest with you, it is important to me because it is therapeutic to myself also. Being here, knowing that my purpose now, and that's what a lot of veterans have problems finding, is purpose after service. So what my purpose has become is to educate our kids about patriotism, about love of country, and also selflessness and sacrifice. So, and that's military in general. But Michael's legacy, the family has done such an amazing job ensuring that his name will go on, and that his, the foundation is going to give, scholarships to different kids to go to college and charities. They've done such a wonderful job of keeping his memory alive. And this museum gets to keep his memory alive and the 318 other SEALs that were killed in action and killed in training alive. So I have a bunch of friends that are on the wall with Michael. We have a wall that we call the cost of freedom. And, I speak about this daily. I speak about all of these guys. So it's just an amazing opportunity for myself to be able to share their stories and explain what amazing men that I had the actual opportunity to work with and be alongside.
Where is that museum located, Chris? I want to make sure people know where it is and how they can visit it.
Yeah, so we're in West Sayville, New York. So it's pretty much Suffolk County, Long Island, about halfway out of the island from the city. So we're about an hour or so out from the city and about an hour or so in west of the Hamptons. So a nice place on the South Shore, real close to the water. But it's just a beautiful museum. We house the Sea Cadets also. So we have the youth, moving up through the ranks here, which is like a Boy Scout, Girl Scout kind of club, teaching military leadership for 11 to 17-year-olds. So we have that also on the grounds, and it's just a wonderful place. I'm trying to expand it as fast as I can. We're adding a helicopter soon, so that'll be out end of June. So we'll be unveiling a Black Hawk outside. So it's a great place to learn about the history of naval special warfare and the stories of a lot of great people.
Yeah, we're seeing some really great images of that museum now. Well, Chris, I know you've also been heavily involved in many of the Freedom 250 events, for which the culmination may be around July 4th. Tell us about some of these events. I know that there is a special candlelight event at Arlington Cemetery. What can you tell me about that?
So we're going to come together at Arlington on Memorial Day on the 25th. We're trying to do a national observance where we can remember to be grateful, reflect on all of these tremendous men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice for their country, remind everybody of the values that have guided our nation for the past 250 years. So to me, it's an obligation to, ensure that people are looking at Memorial Day in a different light than a barbecue. So that's what's going to happen on Memorial Day at Arlington National Cemetery. We're coming together. There'll be Gold Star families. There'll be Medal of Honor recipients. There'll be storytelling. There'll be a candlelight vigil that's going to be in the evening. So it's going to be quite a beautiful tribute throughout Memorial Day and then into the evening.
Yeah, I've always thought that anytime I've visited Arlington, there's just certain a level of reverence and respect that's there that I think anyone traveling to the D.C. area must do at some point in their lives. I think it's just to see the hill after hill of white tombstones it's daunting, but it makes you really think. It makes you ponder what sacrifice really is. Finally, Chris, for those watching who may be enjoying the freedoms today that so many fought and perished to preserve, what words of encouragement or maybe even a reminder would you give to people?
That our nation is there for them, that we have the best military in the world. We are going to ensure that the fight is taken away from our land. So all of those men and women that are sacrificing their years of their lives right now, not seeing their families, not, building a house, not being here, taking the fight elsewhere and protecting us and giving our freedoms, it is a tremendous, I don't want to say a burden, but it's a tremendous responsibility that our military is undertaking. And I am so thankful now, after being out of the service, and now I'm a civilian. It is something that I hope people don't take for granted. I try to explain, and if I only have another minute here, but what I do bring up to a lot of kids when they visit the museum is nobody here goes to bed at night worrying that they're going to wake up and there'll be enemy troops in our streets. And that's a freedom that a lot of people forget about. So that, just remember that you don't wake up and you will never think or never worry that there'll be enemy troops in your streets when you get out of your house.
That is so true, Chris. We're blessed to live in a country like this where, as you said, we don't have to wake up and see that. Where so many other unfortunate parts of the world, that is unfortunately quite true. So, Chris, thank you so much for being with me today, and God bless you, sir, and thank you for your incredible service to this country.
Thank you, Beau, and keep the music writing going.
You got it. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As we close out this special, I hope that you gained as much perspective as I did in interviewing these great guests today. From Karen Vaughn's loss of her son, to Chris Wyllie's mission to honor his fellow SEALs, to Bonnie Carroll's creation of a foundation that directly helps those grieving the loss of a family member, to Navy SEAL Jason Redman's Overcome mindset. We also want to show you some highlights of yesterday's Celebrate Freedom concert at Marty B's in Texas. Take a look. Welcome to Celebrate Freedom, brought to you by Real America's Voice and Real America's Music. Amazing night of worship music, of country music, everything that's celebrating faith, freedom, and the ones who sacrificed it all.
This weekend is about honoring those that would pay the ultimate sacrifice for us, and it's awesome to do it in such an incredible venue. Marty B's out here.
It's so great to see so many friends here.
We've always had a business that adopts conservative principles, so we're proud of it and proud to host this event today.
We're honoring the ones that went for us.
I'm just here to celebrate the ones that have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
It's truly an honor to be a part of it.
'Cause the God of the mountains is the God of the valley. Yeah, yeah. You call my name, and I ran out of that grave. Yes, I did.
I'm here celebrating our freedoms.
I love America.
There's people that have sacrificed their life for the liberties that we still have.
We are blessed to live in freedom.
I still have faith in freedom.
Now we know we've always been free. Love each other even if we disagree.
I was born USA, and you spit on my promised land. You preach from your mountain, but you don't know the cost. I thank God you're not the boss.
All the people we meet here, kindred spirits, it's like a family reunion.
What Real America's Voice has done for me, you guys have done an amazing job here.
And I love hanging out with fellow people that are like-minded, loving America. America's amazing.
I feel like I'm at home here with like-minded people that believe in faith, believe in family, believe in freedom.
We'll support anybody that's telling the truth. And you guys do it. You're responsible to him.
Amen.
And as we close out this special, I do want to alert you to the fact that I'm in a movie that will be airing tomorrow, May 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern on the Hallmark Family Network called The Ultimate Legacy. This movie stars the legendary Raquel Welch, Brian Dennehy, Bill Cobbs, Lee Merriweather, and Doug Jones. And in this role, I play a musician named Maximilian Swain, and I perform my own song called Blessed in this movie for a group of veterans as part of a charity concert. I'm re-releasing this song for Real America's Music on June 12th, just in time for Flag Day, the UFC Fight Night, and the Army's 251st birthday. So you will be able to download it soon. This song will be in the Christian genre, so we want to make it known that we are promoting Christian values and want for Real America's Music to make a significant impact in that genre and the entire music industry as we have done thus far. Have a blessed and safe Memorial Day.